Welcome back to video number 2 for the construction of my Sally costume. The first thing I wanted to accomplish is to start figuring out the lining for the dress, and so when I make the patches I can simply sew them on top. I used a measuring tape to get my waist measurement, which is 35.5 inches, and then I also measured how long I wanted the dress to be. I wanted it to end somewhere in between my shin and my ankle. This is way easier with someone to help you measure, but I did what I could. So I'm just writing down all my measurements and figuring out the diameter of where I need to cut. So to figure out how much you actually cut away of the fabric, you take your waist measurement, and I added a couple inches just to be safe, and divided that by 6.28, which ended up being 6.05. And from the centermost part, you kind of anchor the measuring tape, and then going around in a circle or in a half circle, you mark down where your cut line is going to be. Just try to keep the measuring tape as straight as possible, just so that your measurement is a little bit more accurate. And then to do the bottom of the dress cut, you add how long you want your dress to be, plus the 6.05, or whatever measurement you come up with your waist measurement. I didn't mind being 100% accurate or not with my measuring because I knew I was going to weather and make the bottom of the dress really ratty looking anyways. So normally with a circle skirt, you fold your fabric in a way when you cut so that it's just one piece of skirt, but my fabric was very short in length, so I had to do 2 halves and then sew the edges together. And as I work, I like to periodically try things on when I'm able to, so I took out all the pins and gave it a try. And it fit pretty well. It's a little bit bigger around the waist because it has to be a little bit gathered, but overall I was super happy with it. Then I laid the skirt out flat and got started on making all of the patches. So just a recap from the last video, these are all of the colors and textures that I picked up from Value Village. Different shirts and scrap material can definitely save a buck. So I always used my reference photo just as a little handy reminder, even though I'm kind of taking creative freedom with this project. I wanted to start with her upper green patch that you see on most pictures. Just a little tip, whenever I was using a t-shirt, I made sure to cut off the sleeves first so that the material laid flatter onto the lining. And that just made lining things up a little bit more easy. I like to lay out the fabric of where it's going to be, and I secure it with at least 1 pin before making those cuts, and then as I go I add pins. As I added each patch, I made sure that material overlapped the previous patch so that when I sewed it together, there was no lining peeking through it all or anything. I tried a couple different methods of aligning the different materials together. I tried using a fabric pen to make a guideline, although I found that most of my materials were kind of see-through anyway, so you can see the previous patch underneath and where that ends. So to be honest, most of the patches are just eyeballed. Another thing I was trying to keep in mind was to not have the same colors touching at all. At one point I thought I had to go get another shade or another material, just because I got stumped with what color to do next, and based on how much of the materials I had, but ended up working out pretty decently. This green piece right here gave me a lot of grief because I wanted to add another green piece, but I just couldn't figure out which direction I wanted the shirt to lay, but finally figured out after a million tries. Ta-da! Isn't it beautiful? And now it's time to hate your life by hand sewing every patch together onto the lining. I decided to hand sew instead of using machine because I wanted to hide some of my stitches. I didn't want them blatantly there, because I want the focus to be on the black stitching later. So I took some brown thread and began sewing the pieces together. I made sure that every piece overlapped so that no lining showed through at all. This took me about 2 nights to do. Just make sure that you keep all your pins in, just to make sure that everything stays where you originally put it. And then I decided to work on the tulle. So I was actually debating whether or not to use it, but decided to give it a go. To be honest, I could do without it for the skirt, but it was a fun little project anyways. I'd never used tulle before, so it was kind of my first time just giving it a go. And I decided that I really don't like tulle. It's a slippery little sucker. For the measuring and cutting and everything, it's literally just the exact same thing I did with the lining skirt. To keep things a little bit easier, I drew onto a piece of scrap fabric the first waist cut because it was just more simple to use a pattern than just trying to measure it out. And then like before, I sewed the 2 sides together like how I did with the circle skirt. And then I pinned the tulle in place on the inner side of the skirt, lining up my edge seams as well, and then sewed that together. And this is the skirt pretty much together. It's still loose around the waist, as you can see, but that's going to change when I sew it together and everything. Overall, the movement of the skirt, I am absolutely in love with. I'm so excited to have this all put together. See you in the next video, guys. Stay spooky, my friends. Peace.